My name is Ethan Forsyth, and I'm an honorably discharged United States Marine. I was a corporal, and I was also a combat illustrator in the United States Marine Corps, one of the very last few, as a matter of fact. You may know me as the creator of the comics Listening to 11.9 to 75 megahertz, Akagi Squared, and I'm also the creator of SCP-079. Yes, that SCP-079. But this video isn't to discuss my comics or stories. It's about discussing what the Veteran Affairs VR&E department is all about and my ongoing nightmare with them. So, what is VR&E? VR&E stands for Veterans Readiness and Employment, and it's also known as Chapter 31. VR&E is not Chapter 30, which is the Montgomery GI Bill. It's something completely different. It's something that veterans can avail themselves to. That's separate from the Montgomery GI Bill, but it has, it can provide you, similar opportunities that, for education and training that, the Montgomery GI Bill also has. Um, the training offered that that you could avail yourself to using VR&E includes vocational schools, other business related schools, and even college and university educations, which is my case here. Now let's discuss the eligibility criteria for VR&E. The first thing that you need to be eligible for VR&E is to have a discharge rating greater than dishonorable. You also have to have a 20% or greater VA disability rating. Now, there's also the possibility if you have a 10% that you can also qualify, and we'll get into who decides that here in a moment. But generally, it's 20%. 20%, and that's really the value they're looking for. And you have to demonstrate that your disability creates an employment handicap. And the person who determines this and who is at the center of this entire ongoing issue with me will be your vocational rehabilitation counselor. Now, for those who are availing themselves of VR&E, and if you get accepted, VR&E covers your tuition. That's the nice thing about it. And VR&E also pays you a monthly living stipend while you're going to school. That's the other great thing about it. Now, the process for a veteran to enroll into VRE starts with a completed application. From your application, you'll be set up with a vocational rehabilitation counselor who will give you an interview. And your vocational rehabilitation counselor from there will determine if you qualify or not, which I have. And then afterwards, they will have you attend a VR&E orientation. Now, the thing about this orientation is it likely will occur about up to 1 to 3 months after you have this initial interview with your VR&E counselor. So this is why if you're going to join VR&E, you need to give yourself at least 6 to 7 months before it happens, before you want to return to your school or your vocational school or whatever. You want to you want to give yourself that much lead-in time first. And I do want to impress, you need to do your research on VR&E before you ever decide to get into it. Now, I'm not going to go into everything about how to do this, but I would strongly suggest you go and visit Reddit, because there's certain subreddits that talk about VR&E, and they're a great resource. You need to go there. But the point of this video is to warn you about the problems that I faced in VR&E, and even though I've done my due diligence, and I covered every possible base that I could, because I've dealt with the VA before. And if you've dealt with the VA before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's what I did, and I'm still dealing with a complete mess of an issue. So the point of this part right here is just do your homework and make sure that you cover all your bases before you deal with VR&E. My experience with VR&E started in July of 2025, and that would be at the time of this video. That would have been last year. I applied for VR&E because I had enough of a disability rating of 20%, and I qualified, and honorable discharge, all that good stuff. And I wanted to finish up my degree, and I figured I wanted to finish up my undergraduate degree in mathematics. So I applied for VR&E to this effect, and I had my very first interview, and with who would become my vocational rehabilitation counselor by the name of Janice Adams. You're going to be hearing about Janice Adams a lot in this video because she is of all the problems that I had, she's at the absolute center of them. And when I had that very first, when I had that acceptance by Janice Adams, I had to attend the orientation, and I believe that was just a couple weeks later. I got kind of lucky there. Instead of being months or weeks out, it was just a couple weeks later, which I did. And Janice told me that I needed to get my application into Texas Tech. I was in Battle Creek, Michigan at the time, and I wanted to return to my alma mater of Texas Tech and just finish out my degree. So, she's like, well, you need to get your application in, which I was like, well, that's the first thing I'm going to do. And that's exactly what I did. As soon as I finished that conference call with Janice, I got a hold of Texas Tech and I explained to them, I'm going in on Chapter 31 and I need to put my application in, which is normally $75. But for returning veterans like myself on Chapter 31, the application fee is waived. But, when it comes to these sorts of things, especially when it comes to waiving fees in a university, that goes through a lot of administration and a bunch of other stuff. So it is going to take time. This was at the very end of July. And, but here's the thing. She told me that's the first thing I needed to do. But Janice never gave me an actual deadline. She didn't say you needed to do this by 30 days, by 45 days. But, I still, it wouldn't have mattered. Because I went about it as quickly as I possibly could have, because I didn't want any snags, any hangups. So that was my motivation. And like I said, as soon as the call ended, I got on the phone with Texas Tech, put my application through, and I just had to wait it out. During August, I had to, I had another video conference call with Janice, let her know everything's going fine. And, she's like, did you put your application through? Yes, I did. I'm still waiting on them. It was completely out of my hands. I had no control over that. And I every once in a while I would call in or I would email the administration at Texas Tech and ask them, how's it going with my application? I've got a, I don't have a deadline. But I want to get this in as soon as possible. Around the beginning of September, Texas Tech still hasn't gotten back to me regarding the status of my application. And on September 10th, I got an email message from Janice Adams asking, an update and everything is okay. And I responded in good faith, like, yeah, they are. Texas Tech is still kind of taking their time here. And I even uploaded examples of screenshots and of email messages that I sent back and forth between Texas Tech to show that I'm on top of this. I'm getting things done, as best as I can, but I'm still at the mercy of Texas Tech and their administration. And it was at this point where Janice Adams really showed me what kind of a person she is. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Janice Adams at the VR&E. And I have to stress, these dates that you're seeing here, they all happened on the exact same day within minutes of each other. I'm not exaggerating. So, and the other thing that you need to know is that whenever your VRC counselor messages you, they do it through a certain type of process where it goes to you through email, and then you go and it gives you a link, and you go in and you type this information into this text box on a website on a link. And I strongly suggest that whenever you do this, you save a local copy of whatever you do for yourself. This is, even though the VA says all these things, it'd be still good to save every single detail that, or in every single communication that you have with these folks. So, and that's what I did. I went to this little text box, and I was like, "Hey, everything's fine," blah blah blah. It's like, and letting them know, and the most amazing coincidence happened. 20 minutes after I did that, and I sent that message off to Janice Adams. About 20 minutes later, I got a confirmation email from Texas Tech that my application had been approved. And I'm not making this up, folks. I am not making this up. 10 minutes later, Janice Adams emails me and tells me she just disenrolled me from VR&E, and because she says I did not fulfill the requirement to complete an application to Texas Tech, as if I was slacking off. I am not making this up. You heard that correctly. September 10th was an ominous day for a lot of, for a reason greater than this. It was the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. But at this moment in time, when I was taking that awful news, I was also trying to contact Janice Adams, through phone and email, but she completely ignored me. This was a Wednesday, and I guess she left out for the rest of the week. It was either that or a day later that I contacted the office of Senator Alyssa Slotkin. She is a senator from Michigan, and to let her know what the problem was. And she has a VA representative working for her called Katie, who I already dealt with on a previous issue. And I don't know what Katie did, but Katie got a hold of the VR&E offices in Detroit. And that following Tuesday, Janice Adams called me up, apologizing, just as sweet as can be, telling me that she's my best friend in all of this. That's what she said verbatim. And that my enrollment in VR&E was restored. This was the first indication of what kind of person I was dealing with when it came to Janice Adams. And to say that the caution that I exhibited when it came to dealing with her from here on out, it greatly increased. I realized from here that Janice Adams thought nothing of destroying anybody's work or anything, and just the way, and just this sweet act that she put on after an authority from D.C. called in and said, "Hey, no, you need to fix this." But that right there informed me what kind of a person Janice Adams is. And that greatly amplified my caution when it came to dealing with her. And I realized that I had to be very careful with whatever I said, because I don't know how she can interpret anything in any way to just completely completely derail my plans and everything. As it turns out, I wasn't cautious enough. The other red flags regarding Janice Adams that I encountered were that, one, there was many times where she would misinterpret, intentionally or deliberately, some of my concerns. One of my concerns was the cost of moving my household from Michigan back to Texas. She informed me that VR&E does not cover moving costs, which I think they should, but that's beside the point here. At the time, I was trying to explain to her the difficulties of employment where I was located and finding it. And at the time, my vehicle was broken down, and I needed to get it fixed. There was a repair that I couldn't do by myself on my car, and I had to raise money for that, and I had to raise money for the move too, and which I managed both, and which is fantastic. But she misinterpreted what I was saying there, and she thought that I was complaining for some reason. I don't know why this was. But she was thinking I was complaining about medical issues, and she kept telling me that if I had medical issues, that I need to go to I need to go see a doctor. And she started to inform me that the VA takes care of medical concerns of veterans, which I'm very well aware of. I'm sitting here listening to this woman talk about this, and I'm trying to talk about the costs of moving and the difficulty in finding a job where I can pay for this move, and she's telling me to go see a doctor. And she did this not once, but she did this several times, and I don't know. I still don't know why she did this. It was very strange. And she thought I was ignorant of what the Veterans Affair does, and here's where I was living at the time in Michigan. I was literally next door to one of the largest VA campuses in America. It was literally out my back door. If I needed to go see a doctor, I could get up out of my bed, put my clothes on, walk out the back door, and be at a VA physician in about 5 minutes. If I needed to go pick up a prescription, that's another 5-minute walk from my bedside. And she knew this, but she was carrying on about this like, I just fell off the turnip wagon yesterday. And this is just another one of these red flags about Janice Adams that had me justifiably concerned. But this is only a few months away from whenever I was supposed to leave out of Michigan to get back to Lubbock, Texas for school to start. Now, what you see here is a typical email communication that you're going to have with your VRC counselor. And I want you to note the date. The date there is December 2nd, 2025. This is where Janice Adams is asking me for a copy of my degree plan, transcripts and everything else. We'll get to the degree plan here in a minute. But the transcripts I furnished and the quote unquote training program, is what I plan on, the classes I plan on taking. Now at this point I had already been approved. My plan to finish out my education to get my bachelor's degree in mathematics had already been approved, but they needed to have the degree plan, which I'll get to in a minute. But like I said, I want you to notice the date that I've got there in the red square. And in this email, she brings up this 11 days of entitlement. And this is something that Andrew Trevino over at the El Paso VA just a couple weeks ago, and I'll get to him too, he brought this up too. Now, this is a very curious thing to bring up, and I'll get to that in a minute as well. But, they were both, her and Andrew, both claimed this was somehow an impediment to getting my enrollment and everything going. And, especially when it came to getting my payouts and everything for my stipend and all the other good stuff. And and this 11 days of entitlement has to do with Chapter 30 in the Montgomery GI Bill. Now, and they're both acting like, and here's the really strange thing, both Andrew and Janice here are acting like I should have known about this. This is an internal Veterans Affairs thing, and I'll get to that in a moment too. But as for but the thing is my Montgomery GI Bill expired 8 years before this, before December 2nd, 2025. It expired 8 years ago. I don't know why in the world it's still showing up that I've got 11 days of entitlement of my Montgomery GI Bill. As far as I know, I had ran that out back in 2016. But anyway, and the other screwy thing about this particular email is Janice Adams later claimed that this email was the formal warning she gave me that she's going to cut off my enrollment. If I didn't get this information to her. And there's no formal warning here whatsoever. This is not a VR&E formal warning of anything. This is her telling me that she needs something, and I had already explained to her what the deal was, and I'll be getting to that in just a moment. Now, regarding this 11 days of entitlement they kept going back to, I went and I took every document that I had from my VR&E orientation, and I went to the VR&E website, and all my other documentation regarding the requirements on behalf that's required of the veteran who's applying for this program. So I took each of those files and I ran them through Grok, and I asked Grok to find any and every mention of the Chapter 30, the Montgomery GI Bill, and any correlation that Chapter 30 in the Montgomery GI Bill has to VR&E. Any mention whatsoever. I mean, just not even the correlation, just give me any mentions of it. Grok found 0 mentions of either. Which means that this is an internal concern on the VA. It doesn't involve me. It should have never involved me. They should have never brought this up to me. It is an issue they should have dealt with immediately. But they were both, Janice and Andrew, were putting the responsibility of this on for me. How was I supposed to know any of this? But this is what you're going to deal with whenever you go into VR&E. I don't know why this is, but other than these people are absolutely incompetent, and they certainly don't care about the veterans that they're dealing with. And the other huge question is, if these 11 days were such a huge obstacle, then why did Janice Adams wait until December 2nd to inform me these things? That's really late in the game. That's really late in the game to be dropping this sort of thing onto a veteran who's getting everything ready to move halfway across the country to reattend school. But this is the level of incompetence that I had to deal with. Now, let's get back to the whole issue of what Janice was talking about getting my degree plan to her. And I'd already informed Janice Adams of this particular issue when it comes to Texas Tech. Now, I don't know if this applies to any other universities, but for Texas Tech, they have a policy when it comes to newly arrived students. This happened to me when I was a sophomore. I remember it. It was really bothersome, but I had to deal with it. And I had to deal with it when I returned, even as an undergraduate senior. And the policy is that for us for new students or returning students is they're not allowed to actually register for their classes until the 3-day window before classes actually start. It's limited to that tiny window, and this is after the now they let the seniors, the seniors who are already enrolled and everything, they give them like about 2 months beforehand to pick and choose their classes, and they give the sophomores like a month ahead after that. But the seniors get the first choice, and those who are returning and those who are brand new freshmen, they just have to pick up what's left, and that's what was left to me. And the VR&E requirement is that I had to give them the exact classes that I was going to be taking. I had to give them the exact classes. I couldn't give them a guess or anything, but I couldn't figure out what these classes were going to be until I actually got with my degree planner in the mathematics department and figured it out 3 days before classes actually started. And like I said, I furnished Janice Adams with all my transcripts and everything from my previous time at Texas Tech, and I kept in contact with her throughout December. And I've got I still have several emails I had between December 2nd and the time when I left out on January 6th. And here's the stinger. Here's the real stinger. When I left out, right before I left out, to after I packed everything up, and I paid over $3,000 to U-Haul so I can have a U-Haul truck and a trailer to get myself down to Lubbock. I let Janice know, hey, I'm heading on out here. I'll be down there, and I'll let you know when I get there. She told me to have a safe trip. So I leave out of Battle Creek, and I head down to Lubbock, and I stop off in Salinas, Kansas, to go visit an old friend of mine, and he's a Vietnam veteran, and I got to have home cooking for the first time in years, and boy, that was just a glorious thing for me, let me tell you. And I was sitting there visiting with my old friend, and I had to leave a trailer back up in Michigan, and he's like, well, why don't you and I, this summer between classes, why don't we just drive on up there and go get your trailer, Ethan? And I was like, well, that sounds like a great idea. His name is Doc. And I was like, that's a great idea, Doc. I'd like to do that. I would like to do that a lot. I can afford it. I'll have, everything taken care of, and it'll be great. And he's like, well, I'm looking forward to it, Ethan. And I was like, I am too. And then I managed to get down to Lubbock on the evening of January 7th. And on January 8th, the first thing I did that morning was I went down to Texas Tech and I got with my degree planner and we figured out what classes I can enroll in right away. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm not making this next part up. This is the jaw-dropping part. So I get I take care of that, and I go back to my hotel room so I can get on my laptop and I can inform Janice Adams that I finally got this last detail she needed. And I open up my laptop and I log into my email and I see an email from Janice Adams. And it's an email where Janice Adams informs me that she just dropped me from VR&E because I haven't provided her with my degree plan yet. I am not making this up. Well, I couldn't complain to Alyssa Slotkin's office anymore because I'm down in Texas now. And so what I did was I contacted the voc rehab personnel at the Lubbock VA. And the voc rehab personnel there, by the name of Debbie Perales, informed me that this sort of thing has happened before and that it can be fixed, and it would take, of all things, 120 days. And the process was I had to reapply for VR&E all over again. I had to submit a new application and attend the same orientation that I just attended a few months prior, and then I had to wait for my new counselor. In the meantime, Texas Tech would not be paid their tuition. And it was through I went to the veterans office, and these guys were great. They really took care of me there. I went in there and explained to them the problem, and they kept me enrolled. I told them, I was like, well, the Lubbock VA told me that they'll get this, I've got to wait 120 days, guys. I'm really sorry. But, I'm not going to be paid either. But, I've got credit cards. I'll live off of them for the time being. But they'll take care of it, and, they'll get the payout and everything. And they kept me enrolled is the important thing here. And I was able to stay enrolled all the way till the end of semester in May. And you can already tell that it wasn't taken care of in March. So in late March, after I applied and I attended yet another orientation that both completely unnecessary, I was assigned a new counselor named Andrea Gales. And as soon as I talked to her during our very first interview, I told her what the problem was, and she coldly and snidely informed me that that they would not take care of that prior bill because that's what they considered the tuition for the spring 2026. She's like, we consider that a prior bill, even though what Janice Adams had pulled, a couple months before. And to say that my jaw hit the floor, wouldn't be an exaggeration there either. So this means that the voc rehab representatives of the Lubbock VA had either lied to me or they didn't know what they were talking about. And neither of these things are acceptable. So I set up a meeting with voc rehab folks in Lubbock at the same time that I was going to have another meeting with Andrea Gales. So they could talk to each other and we could figure out what this problem was. And Andrea Gales said the same thing that she told me before, that it's a prior bill and that, there's nothing they can do about it. And guess what the voc rehab folks at Lubbock, the VA, told me to do? Take a wild guess. They told me to fill out another application and wait another 120 days so that I can attend the orientation yet again. They also told me that I could ask for a higher level review, which I did. I requested this twice. The first time in March, the second time in May, and the VA never got back to me on either. Folks, I am not making any of this up. So this is where I am today. Here it is. It's about to be September, and I haven't received a single stipend, and my tuition hasn't been paid. Texas Tech has already placed my tuition bill into collections. But during this time, I was taking care of everything that I was supposed to be taking care of by my monthly stipend with my credit cards. My credit cards are maxed. And now that I've got this big bill in collections and my credit cards are maxed, my credit's destroyed. And this entire mess is due to Janice Adams. She terminated my enrollment not once, but twice. And the first time around, I had to involve a politician from D.C. to get it fixed. And and then the other problem was Janice Adams never gave me a deadline for anything. Both of these terminations of my enrollment were due to deadlines that she never gave me. And she gave me these deadlines after the fact, after she terminated my enrollment. Then Janice Adams was misinterpreting my issues for whatever reason. Either she had zero reading comprehension, or she was willfully misinterpreting my issues for whatever reason. I don't know. She kept pressing the issue of those 11 days of Chapter 30 entitlement as if I had any control over that whatsoever. And the fact that the VR&E requirements did not mention any of this, but she kept bringing it up. And either this was a problem on her or it's a problem on VR&E, but it's not my problem. I was qualified for VR&E, and that's the bottom line. And finally, to add insult to injury, Janice Adams wished me a safe journey on my move back to Texas before pulling the rug out from underneath me when I got there. But let's go ahead and assume, for the sake of argument, that I am at fault here. That I completely deserved Janice Adams terminating my enrollment. When you really think about it, her reasons for terminating my enrollment both times were for equivalent to, because I forgot to dot an I or cross a T, and because that's what that amounts to. But let's assume that she gave me a hard deadline of January 7th, which she didn't, but let's say she did, to return my degree plan, and I returned it to her like I intended to on January 8th. How does this serve veterans? How does this help veterans? Isn't that the point of the VA, is to help and take care of veterans? The mission of the Department of Veterans Affairs is to support and assist America's armed forces and veterans. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, preventing Janice Adams from waiting one more day when it came to my application. She never gave me a deadline, like I've stated several times before. There was nothing preventing Janice Adams from picking up the phone and calling me at any time, asking me what the status of the degree plan was the days before I left out. Janice Adams was fully aware of what the holdup was. Like I said, she wished me a safe trip before I left out. She didn't do any of these things. She was not looking out for my best interests at all, which should be the primary concern of anyone in her position, and she completely failed in that regard. She has no excuse for what she did to me on September 10th of 2025 or January 8th of 2026. I have no other choice but to assume that Janice Adams was acting out of malice. As I've stated before, it's been 9 months since I should have received my first monthly stipend. I'm living off my credit cards. My credit is just destroyed right now. And I can't even afford groceries at this point. Texas Tech, like I stated before, is demanding immediate payment of my spring 2026 tuition, and they put me into collections. Even if I could get VR&E to cover the fall 2026 semester tuition, while we sort this nonsense out, I can't enroll because you guys know how colleges are. They want their money. If you don't pay them, you can't get a transcript, you can't get your grades, you can't get nothing until you pay them. And that's where I'm at right with that. So, and classes have already started. I should be in class right now. This would be my last semester, but I'm not there. And so this has put me entirely a year behind. Janice Adams at the Detroit VR&E office, because she couldn't wait a few hours for me to get that degree plan to her, she cost me an entire year of my life. To say that I am upset at this whole affair is putting it very, very lightly. Janice, if you ever listen to this, and I know eventually you will, I want you to know that what you did to me was absolutely evil. You are not qualified to hold the position that you do. You should not be allowed to, to have any authority or control over a veteran's involvement with VR&E. You have no business working for the VA, period. There are 2 times here where you could have acted in my best interest, and you chose not to. There was nothing preventing you from acting in my best interest on both of these times. But you chose to make the decision that would harm me the most. I think that you need to be fired immediately, and you should never be allowed to work for the VA ever again. Here's my warning to everyone who is looking or planning to go on to VR&E. Things that you need to keep into consideration. The VR&E's vocational rehabilitation counselors are likely directed to find any possible reason to disenroll qualified vets for this program. And if they cannot find a reason, they are encouraged to make a reason. Now, I didn't come up with this on my own or because I'm really upset. I was informed of this by another VR&E vocational rehabilitation counselor at the El Paso offices. He told me that a lot of these counselors are encouraged by their directors to just clear out whatever accounts. And he didn't go into too many details after that. But, that's a hell of a thing to hear. But that's what he said to me. And the other thing that I want you to keep in mind, that is during this entire ordeal, where I was supposed to just go in and be a nice, simple procedure where I go in and have VR&E, take care of, my tuition and my monthly stipend, and I finish my degree and I go on my merry way. I had to involve not 1 but 3 members of Congress just to get things fixed, and it's still not fixed. I went to, like I stated, Senator Alyssa Slotkin in Michigan. Then I went to, here in Texas, I went to Representative Jody Arrington from my area, and he didn't do anything at all. And right now I've turned to Senator Ted Cruz, and I sent all these details to his office with hopes that he can step in and get this fixed, because I don't see any other way at this point. I'll get to the whole legal side here in a minute. But I need to stress the fact I involved 3 politicians from Washington, D.C. to take care of these issues with VR&E. That's insane. So if you take anything away from this video, it's going to be this warning. Your vocational rehabilitation counselor can disenroll you entirely from VR&E at any time for any reason, and there is effectively nothing you can do about it. Now, what you need to do, if you're going to go in and do this, I already told you, make sure you do your due diligence first. Make sure you document everything, and that's what I did. I have my whole folder with all my communications and everything is over 50 megabytes right now. Save every communication, and whenever you go in and you go into that little box where you confer with your VR&E counselor, make sure you save that message that you send them, because you can't save it any other way. So you copy paste it and then save it in Notepad and whatever. And every time your counselor requests that you fulfill a requirement, ask for a deadline. You want a date, and if there's a time of day, you ask for that too. If a week, but make sure you get an exact date. Note that deadline, and then make a record of it through an email to your counselor. That way you can hold it to them. And keep in mind that your counselor is not looking out for your best interests. They're just not. You take it from me. And don't believe them when they tell you that they are, because they're not. They don't care about you at all. These are government employees, and they belong to a union, and they have no fear of ever losing their job. And if they want to sit there and pick their nose all day, that's what they're going to do. And I've encountered at least 5 of them, and just about all 5 of them are just, they're not good people. The only thing they care about is, when is it lunchtime, and when do they get their paychecks? So what can you do if the VA or the VR&E department screws you over? Well, if you're a vet, you already know this. The VA is impenetrable. Whenever you go to your local VA, you'll notice there's a single phone number to access anyone. Everything is gate kept. it's completely insane. And there's several layers to everything, and this is why it takes lawyers to go in and handle your disability claims half the time, because it's just so impenetrable, and they do this by design. It keeps them employed, and it's just an entire evil mess. And this is why I don't really believe Doug Collins when he says he's going in there and fixing things, because he's not fixing anything at all. Currently, your only option whenever, if things come to worse like they have for me, is to request a higher level review. But in my case, I've done that twice, and it's amounted to nothing. They're also going to enforce a 128-day wait for your review, and this is by design too. Like I said, the only thing they care about is when it's lunchtime and their paycheck. They don't care about you. Then, you could try to go in contact to any of the VR&E offices around your state, but, that's a crapshoot too. Half the time you can't get the number for it. And when you do, it's nearly impossible to get a hold of anyone. And if you do get a hold of somebody, like I did with Andrew Trevino at the El Paso offices a couple weeks ago, don't be surprised when they ghost you, because they will. They have nothing to fear when it comes to losing their jobs. That's just the sad fact of the matter. And as I mentioned before, there's the possibility of involving legal help, but there's a lot of law firms in the United States that specialize in VA disability benefits and all the other stuff, the typical stuff, but there's only a few that will deal with Chapter 31 VR&E issues. I only actually found one that really does, and and I talked to them, and they wanted me to pay $5,000 as a retainer beforehand. I can't afford that. I'm right now I'm trying to get the VA to pay for my $800 a month stipend, my living stipend, from 9 months ago. So there's no way I can afford that. But what you can do is you can find out. You can go to Grok and ask if there's any VA accredited lawyers in your area and try to talk to them. Now, what I did today was I went to the law school at Texas Tech, and I talked to folks there to see if there's anything they can do. And one of the guy who leads up that department is a former JAG officer, and he's dealt with the VA before, and hopefully something can come from that. But the sad fact of the matter is, if VR&E decides to screw you over, there's currently very little recourse you have. There's just not much you can do. They can screw you over, and that's just the end of the story. And that's what I'm facing right here. And that's why I'm putting this warning out for you folks. So, how do we fix VR&E? Well, here's what needs to change. Vocational rehabilitation counselors should not have the unilateral authority to terminate a veteran's enrollment, period. That's what Janice Adams did to me twice. They shouldn't have this power, period. And the fact that they're able to do this is ridiculous. There needs to be an open, accessible, and immediate line of communication between the veteran and his VRC's higher-ups. Believe me, if I had access to Janice Adams' superiors, I would have contacted them immediately, especially whenever she was doing all that crazy talk about, how I need to go, see a doctor when I'm talking about moving my stuff and everything. And there needs to be at least 30 days between what is considered an actionable reason to terminate a veteran's enrollment and actual termination of their enrollment. A veteran should always be granted an opportunity to be heard, not only by their counselor, but by the counselor's superiors as well. And only then should, if there's an actionable offense or something, they need to, they think they have just cause to terminate a veteran's enrollment, then they should go from there. But if they have the opportunity to act in the best interest of that veteran and give them another couple hours like what Janice Adams could have done for me, that's what they need to do. And that's about everything I have to say on the matter for this video. And I hope that this educated you and gave you plenty of warning on how to handle things, and so you can avoid what I've had to suffer dealing with VR&E. And if you're a VA accredited lawyer, a member of a law firm that's also VA accredited, and would like to go over my case and possibly represent me, here's my Twitter X ID. And I would put my email address on here or something so that you could contact. But for some reason, YouTube doesn't like that. So the best way to get a hold of me is to go to my X account, and my DMs are going to be open for this. And for the rest of you, if you make it through VR&E, I hope the best for you. I hope it works out for you, but be careful. And because there's a lot of problems with this department, and they need to be fixed.